All right. Well, welcome, George. It's been an exciting journey you've been on over the years. Been a nice observer and passenger in some cases to watch the storied story or storied success you've had along the way here. And appreciate you joining us here.
I'm excited to be here and excited to be on the Mantle platform as well. So really happy you guys are around to make my life as a founder so much easier.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it. A lot of people who know you know the storied background, but let's kind of set the table for folks here. I won't do it justice, so we'll let you kick it off and kind of give your stuff, and I will make sure to interject where I see you underselling yourself.
Awesome, awesome. So my story, I like many Indian kids, my options were engineering or medicine, so I went to engineering. I trained as an electrical engineer. I got hooked on startups actually pretty early. There were two startups that I found myself stumbled into. The first one was actually Dubai. So I was born in Dubai in the 70s, just when that nation was starting and taking off. I had no idea that I was witnessing a nation being built, but it was an incredible 15 years we had in Dubai. And then during my undergrad, I landed at this company making these wireless email devices, and I was like, "Who needs wireless email? We have email on our PC." I found myself doing an internship at BlackBerry in the 90s and rode that wave all the way up to like 90 billion valuation, lawsuits from NTP. And I completely got hooked. I got hooked on, you got to see what a team could do that when they spotted a technology shift and brought together a bunch of underdogs to take on the big dogs and bring this beautiful product to the world. And I remember the first time I was on a plane, I saw this stranger using a device that I had worked on. And I was like, holy shit, we built that and they love it and they're using it. And seeing New York Times interviews and all this, I was like, okay, that's it. I want to be startups for the rest of my life. So instead of starting in another company, though, I went back to school. I went back to school. I did a law degree and a business degree, and fortunately, that's where I ran into Dan DeBow and David Stein, and joined them on their journey, starting Ripple until it got acquired by Salesforce. And after Salesforce, this was in 2012. I didn't want to do the big company thing, but I had a chance to join a venture fund. I kind of see how the sausage got made on the other side. So I joined Omer's Ventures, spent a year there. Um, then we had the fortune of investing in Shopify in their pre-IPO round, and the energy of what we saw when we went to do our diligence just reminded me how much I loved being in the trenches. It was around the time that AI was taking off, and I was like, okay, this AI stuff is really cool. I don't want to miss it. This is 2014. Um, I got interested in what you could do with AI and robotics, and Dan introduced me to Jordy Rose. And then I joined Jordy and James Bergstra, Ajay Agarwal, and we started Kindred. That was a super high risk, deep tech kind of company. And I know, having been at Omers, I knew that like to get financing for that, we had to go down to the Bay Area. So most of the team stayed in Toronto. I moved down to California, parked myself in Palo Alto, and then built the company out there. Exciting journey, trying to figure out what to do with deep learning in the context of robotics, found a market, started selling to e-commerce. And then a British company came knocking on our doors, Ocado. And then we got acquired around COVID, just when robotics and e-commerce was really taking off. When I was in California, I had a chance I had my first exposure to climate change and the drying of Silicon Valley and the wildfires and the red air, the red skies and smoke-filled air. And I was like, holy shit, that's what I want to work on next. So I took a sabbatical after the company exited. I came back to Toronto, spent a couple of years going deep into all things energy related, and started Aire Labs 2 years ago.
Amazing. I know you said that in a matter of minutes, but that is a lifetime in the story. I'll just interject a couple of things that I've observed along the way. I think though BlackBerry isn't Android and isn't iPhone at the time, a $90 billion market cap public company, I think was probably the most valuable company in Canada, maybe one of the top five
Hmm.
tech companies, if I had to go back in the time. Super impressive run. Obviously, it went from local phenomenon to global zeitgeist, right? So that's kind of one of those things. I think our interaction started when you were at Ripple. I was a
Hmm.
small and along the journey. So that was super great. And the friendships from that journey seem to have spawned and created a mafia of people who've gone on and done some great
Oh
things.
yeah.
Congrats and hats off
Yep.
to
Yep.
that. Maybe a separate episode where you can run through that and all the offshoots that have come from there. So that's super impressive. And then maybe just one more, and I'm trying to use this, refine the prompt a bit on what Kindred did, because I think though you said it in passing, I think it was a fundamentally important building block for what we're seeing today. So maybe just a minute on that.
Yeah. So before Kindred got started, we kind of saw that something very interesting was happening in deep learning. You had these massive neural networks that could learn off of massive amounts of data. So we felt that if you take that approach and um, power a robot, you could use all the data the robot is getting from all its joints, from its cameras, from its world around it, to train a robot to be more intelligent. And so we were starting to build robots. This is 2014, and we were building humanoid robots that were being trained using deep learning neural networks. The robots were controlled by humans, remotely controlled by humans, so that they were powered by human intelligence, and the neural networks would be learning from what the humans were doing, so that we could then create algorithms to control the robots. My job was to figure out, while the research team was doing their research into deep learning and reinforcement learning and robotics, my job was to take some of that research ideas and figure out commercial opportunities. So one of the things that was getting hot around that time was e-commerce. You had e-commerce was booming. You didn't have enough people to do the work, and Gap, Amazon, Target, all these companies were looking for ways to do this work that was exploding in the warehouses. And we're like, holy shit, here's an opportunity. You have thousands of different types and shapes of things you need to pick up. You can't use an industrial robot for it. Well, maybe we can train these deep learning neural networks to pick up objects and train them through usage. So we did that. What we ended up doing was built this plug and play robot that you could wheel into the warehouse, plug it into the wall, plug it into the internet, and it would start picking up objects in Gap's warehouses. The magic that we had figured out was that sometimes the robot could do it by itself, so it would do it autonomously, but sometimes the robot needed help, but he would connect remotely with robotics operators that were in our offices in the Bay Area or in offices in Mexico or Canada. Doesn't matter. You connect remotely and help the robot out. And when it did that, it could then learn and get better in the next time, or create trained data that our researchers could then use to improve the algorithms.
This
That
is
that was
sci-fi
that was the
movies,
magic.
for context, a decade ago, right? That you're seeing a lot of
Hmm.
activity
Hmm.
now. So you've perennially been ahead of the curve. So now on to Aire Labs. You saw the opportunity there, which is super exciting. Lots to get in there. Maybe just building on that, like what is the pain point that you're really going after? Obviously, you had the reckoning moment, and then what's the first customer and customer process here?
Yeah. So my one of the things I realized after I had my alarm moment, oh my God, this is bad. We need to do something about it. I kind of had a realization. I'm an optimist by nature, and I think humans are a adaptive, surviving species. So I was like, okay, we're not just gonna sit around and do nothing. We're gonna do something. We might be too late. We might do too slowly, but we'll do something. All right. So if we're gonna do something, what are we gonna do? So then I took a step back and I realized, there's the global economy is about $100 trillion in gross percentage point every year. Over the next few decades, we are going to rewire this $100 trillion economy to be climate compatible. And it'll happen slowly. It'll start in a certain space and then go elsewhere. So given that, what did I want to work on? There was a huge, huge spectrum of opportunities to work on. I'm an electrical engineer by training, so I looked at some of the hardware spaces. But then around that time, Silicon Valley Bank went under, and I was like, oh shoot, there goes my financing for hardware startups. Okay, forget it. I'm going to work on software. And so then I got excited about AI and the opportunities in climate. And basically, I went and spoke to hundreds of people in the industry and said, hey, I know AI. I want to work on climate. How can I help you guys? So what we discovered in that process was that at this point, there are a lot of technologies now that are mature, they're starting to become mature, energy technologies that are starting to become mature, and stuff that are in the lab that are very promising, that are close to maturity. And what the challenge now is, how do you get it out? How do we rewire the global economy with all these new technologies that don't have a long track record, right? So what we discovered is that there's this unsung hero, the project developer, who goes out there much like a real estate developer, they have a concept, they buy the land, get a lease, they decide they're going to put up a battery facility, a solar facility, a wind facility, green hydrogen, aviation. They're going to put something up. And they, like an entrepreneur, they bring together the permits, the customers, the suppliers, the hardware vendors, and they bring the construction engineers, they design these projects, they build it, and they ship it. That is how we get all this technology out through these project developers that we deploy it out. So we are tackling that problem. So when we started doing digging, what we really found is that this entire industry hasn't seen a lot of innovation in decades. They still do a lot of things with Excel, they do things with consultants, and it was okay back in the day when you had mature technologies and you had lots of time to deploy things. But nations around the world, Canada, parts of the US, Europe, India, China, they're all in a race to deploy things as fast as possible, whether it's energy for data centers, whether it's new community solar, community wind, community battery systems. So we're like, well, what other industry do we know has shipped stuff really fast at massive scale? Software. So how does software do it? Well, we have a development tool stack. We have dev tools, we have deployment processes, we have automation, we have scripting. What if we brought some of these ideas into project development and start making it easy for these project developers to ship a project, not in 3 years, but in 1 year? It doesn't take months to do this analysis, it takes hours. What if they could unit test all their designs when they make an iteration? What if they can automatically ingest data into each project model when they go for financing? So a lot of those concepts we built in, we pitched it, we did some prototypes, people loved it. Now we built a platform and starting to onboard live projects. So what we're doing is basically helping people. If you have a concept for a project, we will help you go through that project development process till you get the financing for it, and then you can start construction and then
Yeah,
provide clean energy or
this
what have you.
is there's so many things to dig in there. Yeah, thanks for doing this. This sounds super important, and it is super important as you're going through it. One of the things, just on a small scale, you see locally, you see things being built out, whether they're distribution centers,
Mm-hmm.
SMRs, power generation. All of these
Mm-hmm.
things come through this process, and whether you're
Exactly.
building something at scale or at a home level, it just takes forever.
It does. Needlessly.
Needlessly, doesn't feel right. That's super impressive. Um, your customers, as you talk about, kind of work on renewable energy to infrastructure. What's been the trick for you to support all sorts of things on different spectrums of timelines and financial skills?
So we wanted to take a very Swiss approach, a neutral approach to the technology. So we didn't want to focus on one technology or one project size, right? So from the beginning, we were looking for ways in which what's generalizable across all these technologies, all these geographies, all these sectors. And so we discovered the project development process that people follow. Oil and gas has followed it for decades. So there's this process that they follow, and it's been slightly adapted. The tool that everybody uses is Excel. So there's a very generalizable set of tools. It's Excel, it's contracts in PDFs, it's a data room on SharePoint or some other diligence provider. That is the information that you need to structure and organize and deal with. So there's some very simple ways to translate that into a pretty generic platform that you can then operate on. So the thing that makes what we're doing really possible today is all the what's happened in LLMs the last couple of years. Like when we started the company, I was looking at the advances in deep learning and physics-based neural networks, and I was like, "Oh, this is great. We can do better forecasting. We can do better risk prediction." And then LLMs happened, and like, wait a second, we can do so much more. We can actually automate these workflows. We can automate data ingestion. We can automate data restructuring, data transformation. It's like, holy shit, we can do
Yeah,
so much
yeah,
more.
yeah. Well, it's super interesting. There's the contrast of like tools being developed like developer tools that have scaled super fast,
Hmm.
uh, ostensibly out of dorm rooms, if I had to kind of use the analogy. And then there's lifelong learning opportunities that take a journey like yours to have gone through, the various phases of learning to get to this point. So it's super interesting to watch, and it feels like there's legs on all of these opportunities, and the ones that like this, where it takes a lifetime of learning, are super interesting for me, just to be like, okay, there's a lot to learn, a lot to tease from here. So you're obviously a very successful individual entrepreneur. Walk through the fundraising. What was the process like? What were some of the things you expected? Some of the things that caught you off guard? This one to me, whether you're raising your first round or 10th round always has a fun story to it.
Okay, well, fun story. I haven't actually started fundraising for this company. Um, Not formally yet, but it's coming down. But what I wanted to do, I use the proceeds from Kindred to do the first set of discovery. What I learned in multiple previous companies, is like venture is amazing when you want to really accelerate growth, right? Um, Venture is not that great if you have a long exploration cycle. And we kind of learned that lesson at Kindred. You know, spent 2 years doing exploration on venture time that in hindsight, we could have done off of venture time and then brought in venture capital to do this, to the product market fit and then scaling. So I wanted to do that this time. So I funded the first year or so with my capital to do the customer discovery. So lots of like throwaway prototypes and conversations and conferences and cold calling people. And then one of our first engineers at Ripple, Amar Varma, he funded the company as well, did a pre-seed funding round for a company. We've been talking about climate related work for a long time, and he was starting to see all the signals in Europe. So he's like, I need to invest in your company. So he's invested about $1 million in. So probably in a little while, I'll start fundraising. But what I've been trying to educate a lot of investors on is the opportunity in climate. Like I think that I'm pretty surprised how few people see the opportunity in infrastructure. You're basically rewiring trillions of dollars in infrastructure, right? Data centers alone, that's a few $1 trillion. Like when you think about your local energy infrastructure for your residential, for commercial, for industrial, for airports and hospitals. Like that's a lot of trillions of dollars. So I think my surprise right now is not that many people are as aware of it as I would have expected.
Yeah. No, it's super helpful. I think for people listening or watching, like getting the opportunity to fund your own discovery to then really figure out what can resonate in your
Hmm.
own speed, time, and like frame of reference, I think is incredibly valuable. There's a few people
Yes.
like yourself that have been blessed to do it. I feel like we were able to do that in this journey at Mantle to get started and kind of worked on our own time and pace to really discover the opportunity. And for all the investors out there, like, you know, knowing the domain, coming to successful people who are building stuff to have like a differentiator, I think is what I'm hearing in this context. So
No, well, Amar, I haven't been fundraising. I have been talking to investors, mostly friends, investor friends of mine, and keeping them abreast in the journey. So it's actually been it's been nice. I've had the benefit of both worlds. Like I've been getting their advice and their feedback and what they're seeing in the market and what they're seeing with competitors without the pressure right now.
yeah, yeah, that's a gift and a luxury you've earned, right? I think people look at that and go, it'd be nice. I go, he's living life example, right? Let's get to some of the hard stuff. Starting at zero seems to be a thing for you. What's the most difficult part that really motivates you and drives you? Obviously, solving a problem set you described, but is it like a 0 to 1 where somebody goes yes? Is it somebody said yes and now they're really saying yes? Like what? Maybe kind of give it in phases, or how do you frame it for yourself?
Yeah, certainly I think about it in the Peter Thiel's framework of 0 to 1. There's an early phase where you're exploring, you're testing, you're throwing stuff away. Strong opinions likely held. So there's a lot of that. And then the 1 to 100, right? Then just kind of build that repeatable engine and then get to the blitz scaling phase. So I think of it in those three phases. So the part that I like and the reason I keep coming back to startups is at Kindred, we work on a small team. Again, the underdog, where we're building things, we're putting it into the market, we're getting the feedback, and if it works, it's wonderful. I love that feedback loop, the real feedback loop, the no BS feedback loop. I had a hard time in venture when I worked at Omers because I realized the feedback loop is very slow. It's years before you find out if you're a good investor or not, right? In the interim, there's a lot of false signals. I had a hard time with that. Um, but so what I love about these early stages of a startup is that there's no bullshitting. Your clock is running out, and if you're bullshitting yourself, you will run out of money and you will fail. So you have to be constantly both optimistic of where things are going to go, but also realistic about, is it working? Is it not working? What is the customer saying? Do they like it? Are they using it? Are they not using it? So I love that. I love that energy. So I keep coming back for that. And I'd like to keep that energy going. So I like that part. I've always enjoyed, I think what I realized over the decades, like I realized don't like the research side of technology. So Kindred, we were very much in the research side. And I was like, I'm not that excited about that part. I'm not excited about where there's no technology and it's more like a product or distribution iteration. I like being at that intersection. something new is coming out, you have to figure out what's the recipe for this new thing, right? Michael Lewis had a book in the 90s, The New Thing. That's the thing I like to figure out. What is a recipe for the new thing? So we have machine learning, we have LLMs, we have generative AI, we have this climate transition. Well, what is the thing that makes this all unlocks all this that people love? So I love that part. So that's the part that keeps coming, bringing me back. So what's hard about it? The hard thing is you have to go from being a somebody with something to being a nobody, and you got to earn your stripes again.
Yes.
I feel like you always have to do that. Like in this industry, nobody knows who Kindred is. Nobody knows deep learning. It's a different industry, right? Energy, mechanical engineers, chemical engineers, they don't know any of that. So it's like I'm an intern again, and I'm like knocking at the door, like, "Hey guys, I just wanted to talk to you," and that can be hard on the ego, to be honest. Like it's very hard on the ego. So that's the hard part, and you don't know. You're in the fog, right? You're in the fog. You're trying things out. You have to be both optimistic, but also realistic, and not too depressed about things, right? And not quit.
So teasing from here, there's like a deep intellectual curiosity, feedback loops, and
Mhm.
a proving yourself from zero to hero, but you're not really starting at, well, I guess you're starting at zero in some capacities each time, but it's super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Something I've always, what I found is I've always taken something I know of to get in the door to learn something I don't know. At Ripple, I was in business school at the time, so Dan wanted me to build financial models and help them with operations, something I knew. And I was like, oh, how does this startup thing work? Why don't I do work with these repeat entrepreneurs and learn from them, right? Same thing at Kindred. I was like, I know how to build startups. Oh, what is this machine learning thing? It's very interesting. I'd love to learn from these researchers about deep learning.
So much here. I feel like um, maybe a couple of things. What is one of the things about building a company that you got totally wrong? I think this is one of the ones where people sit there daily, they're grinding, and they're like, they can fall into these curves of false signals and noise, and then they can
Mhm.
fall victim to an echo chamber of negative news. And it's like really filtering out and understanding how to get yourself into the right areas is one of the key winning traits. But
Mhm.
maybe talk about some of the stuff that has become untrue for you.
So, I mean, okay, the jury's still out on this. We'll see if it works out. But this time around, we are running the company very differently. Before, the mantra was you always want to hire the best of the best of the best of the best, the 100x engineer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Doesn't matter how difficult they are to work with. Doesn't matter what impact they have on the team. You should still do that. This time around, I was like, no, this is a long journey. This is going to be a decade. I want to work with people I enjoy working with, and I will prioritize that. And that's actually something Peter Thiel talks about in Zero to One. I didn't really grok it at the time. I didn't really understand at the time, but now, so that's something I've rejected this notion of we're gonna go through this extensive recruiting process. We're gonna hire from the best companies. We're gonna find best people. Who cares how they treat the secretary? Who cares how they treat the staff, the junior staff, the co-ops? Don't care. No, it's the opposite. This time around, we are primarily working with people that each of us has worked with before in some capacity. So we already know the person. We enjoy working with them. And so 2 years in, like I'm like it's been amazing. There's been no drama. There's like we work well together. Every person has their own life situation, and they can put in different amounts of time or different amounts of effort, and it's fine because we
I'll
enjoy working
intersect
together.
here. I love it because I've had the luxury. This is our fifth chapter with the same crew, and the new folks we end up being you know students who turn into full timers or
Hmm.
somebody who's
Hmm.
thrown their
Hmm.
six months away,
Hmm.
and it's always super
Yep.
interesting to watch the dynamic. I'll even advance that part of your thesis into customers. Like when you find your customer 5 7 years later in a different chapter of their life or a different journey,
Hmm.
the ones that you got promoted, got the big
Hmm.
shiny office
Hmm.
for, and working with them, they love coming back and having a repeat relationship with you.
Absolutely.
So I think people should take note of that and be like, hey, not only is it about team building, but it's also about customer relationships over time, not just next
100%.
year, but like the next chapters. So that's a great
100%.
insight.
I still have like the senior leaders at Gap are still like, George, next time you're in town, you should come by. We'd love to see what you're working on next. Absolutely. Absolutely true.
And then maybe just the final two things. One, what is the one thing people don't know about you that you'd love to share?
Oh, I recently became a pilot during COVID. It was my COVID project. Got a pilot's license and started flying. And after going through the training, it was amazing. I was like amazed by how much of flight training applies to startups. So dealing with crazy, uncontrollable situations that are beyond you. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with how do you deal with human psychology in a urgent situation, things like that. Lots of lessons
A lot in there.
from there.
Don't run out of runway. That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. Don't run a runway. Always keep an eye out for the emergency landings.
There you go. And then finally, maybe just a quick blurb on mental. I know you touched upon it at the start, but maybe just a couple quick things on why it's been helpful, if it's been helpful, and things we could maybe even make better.
Absolutely. So, I mean, look, one of my beefs with our startup culture is we keep a lot of our employees in the dark. I absolutely hate that. Like, it's like they need to know the value of it. So what I love about Mantle is you have a beautiful portal that employees can access and be up to date with. So that's on the employee side. For me, starting a company, I wanted to get started in the right rails as we grow. And at the same time, I only have so much time because I'm the janitor, the coffee maker, the chef, everything in one, right? The onboarding process at Mantle was amazing. It was so fast. I just gave the documents, it all got sucked in, everything was set up, and I was like, this is pretty. I can share this with my employees and not feel like a loser. It looks great. So I love that. The board actions, tracking that, being able to issue equity through the platform, have the data room right there, always ready in case a financing happens. All of that, those are things that I spent hours and hours and hours on through the course of the year, like at multiple startups using Carta. Before that was Excel spreadsheets. So getting rid of all that is exciting. I'm also learning from what you guys are doing and how you're building Mantle because I'm taking lessons from that for my own platform. So for our team, our internal guidance on tools is find the best product out there so that A, it helps us, and B, we can learn from them and what we should want to put into our platform. So that's why we're
Cool.
on Mantle.
Well, thank you. We're excited. Thanks for spending the time with us, and I know people will get a ton of insight out of your journey and thoughts. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you, Omar. Enjoy San Diego.